Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Nima podcast. I'm your host, Nima, and today I'm going to be speaking with my guest, Andrea, who goes by her artist name, Crown and Palette. Andrea is a multidisciplinary artist with works spanning from digital collage, digital illustration, and alcohol ink art. Her work is concerned with astrology, spirituality, and the divine feminine. She's been selling her works as NFTs as well as collecting others' works since last year and has become quite a community leader in the NFT space, mostly through her Twitter page, which is at Crown and Palette, and through working with the Join organization, which was previously known as Chester. So, Andrea, welcome to the podcast. It's really great to have you here.
Thank you much, Nima, for having me. I thoroughly enjoyed all of your podcasts. Episode 5 now. I feel like you've done so many more than that. But I've listened to all of your podcasts, and you're doing such an amazing job. And I love that we have connected in the NFT space so early on to kind of watch each other grow throughout this crazy world of
Yeah,
NFTs. And here we are. I know you have your own podcast now, and I just cannot wait. Cannot wait to start dig into all these topics.
yeah. So, for people that don't know, me and Andrea met through the NFT community right at the start of both of our journeys last March or April or thereabouts. And it's been a hell of a ride since then, just seeing both of our journeys. So, yeah, very happy to have you on the podcast. So, could you start by describing sort of your creative and artistic journey? From the very first point you noticed yourself being creative, whether that was childhood or whenever that was, to where you are now with all these different art forms, collage, illustration, and alcohol ink. Could you describe that journey?
Absolutely. So first of all, I just want to say thank you again, everyone, for being here. I'm so happy to see so many familiar faces here. Y'all have lifted me up so much over the last year, and I wouldn't be where I am without all of you and your support. So in terms of my artistic yes, it definitely stemmed from childhood. When I was young, my parents actually put me in drawing lessons. I started with pencil drawings, and there was actually a professional pencil drawing artist in my little hometown of Timmins. For those who don't know, I'm in Canada. I am in the province of Ontario. For those who know where Toronto is, my hometown's about 8 hours north of Toronto. If you can believe there's civilization up there, there is. It's quite cold up there in the winters, but the rest of it, it's a lovely town. I had a lot of opportunities there growing up, but I first started doing drawing lessons there. And then that quickly grew into my love for painting. I did a lot of watercolor to acrylic. And then as I went through high school, or even elementary school was, from art awards to music awards, like arts was my thing. It was just something so gravitated toward. And every opportunity to do every kind of art project you can think of. Leading into high school, I had to decide, what I want to do for a career. And I thought to myself, maybe I should become an architect. So I actually went through the process and went off to university to pursue an architecture degree, only to find out that it actually wasn't my passion. And long story short, it kind of demotivated me, and it actually made me feel so discouraged about art that I actually took a 10-year hiatus from doing any kind of art. Like, I'm talking kind of from crafts to whatever. It was a very low point in my life because I did work so hard to get into a very competitive program, Ottawa, actually, our capital. And so it wasn't until I started tapping into more of my spirituality, which a lot of you who are in this audience are aware. A lot of my artwork is tailored to the spiritual realm. And spirituality, I mean, that's a whole other separate topic too. I kind of was always spiritual, but I didn't really know or really understand what that meant. I was always a huge fan of astrology. So that's kind of where, that's led me into the artwork I do now. But even prior to that, so you did mention some of the other mediums I worked on in the past. So I first started my art business, I'm trying to think now, I think it was April of 2020. So just around the time when the pandemic was declared. Outside of art, I am very athletic. I play a lot of sports, and unfortunately I got a really bad ankle injury, and then the pandemic occurred. So I really was in a place where I needed an outlet. I needed something to feel motivated by. So I bought a brand new iPad, and I got an Apple Pencil, and I just started to draw again. And I was like, wow, I really missed drawing and being creative. It's like, how did I go 10 years without doing this? So I did some illustration work. And then I was introduced to such a beautiful community on Instagram, a lot of collage artists, and enough so that it inspired me to kind of get into collage art. But considering myself as a multidisciplinary artist, I kind of like dipping my toes and hands into any kind of medium that I can, I get bored really fast. So I actually was introduced to alcoholing through Instagram as well. Alcoholing, for those who are not aware what that medium is essentially a beautiful medium. For those who may not know who Mari Ink art is, that's the type of medium that she works on, is alcoholing. It's essentially a bunch of dyes that are diluted with alcohol, where you would use something like isopropyl alcohol, 99%, and you would use it to kind of mix together and use a heating tool to manipulate the shapes that you want. So you can make some beautiful abstract work with alcohol ink. It's a very expensive medium. I will say that. It's not cheap. And it's also not very health friendly as well. So it requires wearing a respirator, making sure that you're not inhaling all the fumes. But it was such a beautiful medium. Really helped me to kind of just get back into abstract art and just to really feel out how I'm feeling and just creating art based on how I was feeling in that moment. But I really, really fell in love with 2D collage work not long after my alcoholing journey. And I decided to kind of go full tilt into the 2D collage work, tailoring it to mostly to the spiritual realm, shadow work as well, for those who understand the difference between light and shadow. The energies between that, from the divine feminine to divine masculine. These are very much topics that I've been interested in since I was very, very young. And up until I got a natal chart reading, for those who know what that is, an astrology chart reading can really dive deep into, your life soul purpose, to many different things that really kind of opened my eyes to, holy crap, like I really feel like I'm not tapping into my full potential. And I don't think that I am even aware of what I'm capable of doing. So from there, again, like I really just dove headfirst into 2D collage and the spiritual realm with astrology. So I'm mostly active on Instagram and Twitter as well. But Instagram, a very loyal following there that does check out my work. They check out the insights, and I work heavily with astrologers. I'm not a writer by any means. I create the art for astrological events, for the moon cycles, that a lot of people tend to look for, especially for small businesses, for the meditation practices, for example. So essentially, I'm creating the visuals for these types of things. And, first and foremost, I create art because I'm passionate about it and I love it. I don't create NFTs, for example, for the sake as an NFT. I create because that's what's channeling through me at that moment. And then later on, I may potentially turn it into NFT. So yeah, there's a lot of moving pieces that I've kind of mentioned here in the last, I don't know, maybe 4 to 5 minutes of speaking. But as you can see, like I really am passionate about so many areas of art. But it's kind of led me to this point now where I had to really niche down. As we know, it has being multidisciplinary. I know Courtney's in the audience. She understands. We have to niche down. We can't always, dip our toes into everything, especially when we have a brand, we have a business. So that's mostly what I do now is everything you see on Twitter, for example, is all my 2D collage works that are tailored to each of these topics.
Wow, there's so much to unpack there. It's cool how everything's connected sort of to the sort of your early life. As you said, you've always had that inclination towards light and shadow, and also you always had that sort of artistic urge as well. It was with the drawing and the painting when you were a child. One thing that I'm quite interested in now, where you said the 10-year gap that you had in your creativity. Yeah, I find that interesting. That you fell out of love with your creativity and then back into it just recently, like couple of years ago. Why do you think you fell out of love with your creativity all the way back then? Like, do you know what it was that made you stop creating art?
It's funny because I actually think I ask myself this quite often. It's like, what really led me to that? And so I know that Gianmarco and Pierre Andrea here, architecture background, the three of us all know that it's very difficult. It's not an easy. It's very difficult. It can be very tempting, and you have to really, really love it. And be very passionate about it. And that simply just wasn't the case for me. I think it was one of those things where, in high school, I had to, work really hard to get really high grades, for example, to even get into the program. I had to get 90s in physics and math. And it's like, come on, like I'm terrible at the time. I was terrible at math. I'm better at it now, but it was just like, it was such a struggle for me. And I worked so hard to get into the program, dedicating my entire high school, building a portfolio that I was very, very proud of. And I'm very proud. That is, to me, to this day, is one of my proudest accomplishments, to be able to get into the architecture program at the university I went to. They only accept 100 students out of about 2,000 to 3,000 people. So that's something that I will always, remember as a huge accomplishment for me. But I think it was just the experience overall in the program itself. I just didn't feel lit up. I didn't feel like it just was my calling. and it kind of made me question my identity as an artist in general, thinking like maybe I'm just not cut out for this. And there was plenty of students as well who were incredibly talented, and it made me really question like, damn, like I don't know if I'm gonna be as just as good as everybody else here. And I really started doubting myself. Absolutely, like doubt, like you wouldn't believe. And it made me question if I was ever good enough to be an artist of any kind. So it sounds very negative, certainly the experience that I had. You would think that by being exposed to so many talented artists in that room that it would inspire me to really kind of just dove in, but no, it just again was the passion for architecture at the time was not there compared to others. And when you associate all this time and effort to get into something like that, for it to just completely flip flop and like, okay, but now what am I going to do? I'm gonna have to change programs. I had to change my career path. Like it was just very much a big like tower moment. Like for the tower, for those who know tarot, the tower is kind of like things are just structures and everything is just crumbling down on you, and you're just questioning your identity, who you are, what you're going to do in your career. And I'm a very career oriented person, so that was a very difficult phase of my life at that point. So I hope that can provide a little bit context as to why I was like, what, maybe I'm just not going to do art, maybe that's just not what I'm meant to do. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So do you think the education sort of system could be handled differently, or they could have done something differently in the education system, whether it was preceding actually going to university or at the university itself? Or do you think it was just a matter of mismatch in passions?
I think the thing that I failed to when I was in high school, and I think in a lot of ways, we obviously could use some improvement in our education in general, is that, they tell us, you need to go to university, you need to go to college, you need to go to post-secondary education. But then do we ever talk about, what it means to be an architect? What does it mean to be an engineer? What are the lifestyle that you're going to live with such a career? Being an architect, at least from what I've learned, being an architect is not an easy job. It's a very difficult job, and unless you're very passionate about it, you know, it's just something that I couldn't see myself doing, being the lifestyle of an architect. And I wish that somebody told me this. I wish that they spent more time, maybe in the high school, like provide more speakers to come to our school to kind of give us more insight as to what they do in their career, or even just giving more insight as to, again, like what are the things that you would do day to day as an architect. And at the time it was just like, I was like, I just need to go to university. I just need to get a degree. I need to, I was thinking too much about, I guess, the career from like a status standpoint, and not necessarily about the really intricate details of what it means and what are the things you're going to have to do in that career. So I think there's maybe a lack of education there for my part, that maybe, I was young at the time, we're all young, and that's a very young age to even go off to university, college. I think in general, maybe people may disagree with me on that, but I was 17, 18. It's like, when someone tells you like, what are you going to be doing for the rest of your life? Like, that's a big question to ask at such a young age. And I do think it's quite natural to change career paths once or twice in our lifetime. But I mean, at that time, when you're being asked that question, it's like, like it's a lot to process, right? So sometimes we don't think about all the ins and outs of what these decisions that we're making. You know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%. I guess looking back, in hindsight, I'm sure, everything does happen for a reason, and that path definitely still made you who you are today. So there's always that perspective of it. But I also went through like sort of the same sort of process. Like I went to university because I was just thinking, I have to go to university. That was what the programming was, and what everyone at school was telling me. You have to go to university. And I also think it is a young age, like around 17, 18, you really, I feel like unless you've really spent time with yourself, getting to know yourself, exploring what you like, exploring what you want to do, chances are you probably don't know what you actually want to do. So yeah, education is like a big theme. I feel like it's going to pop up in a lot of my podcast episodes, but it's something I'm passionate about because I think there's just so many problems in the education system, where they don't encourage. I feel like people don't encourage students or children enough to explore, to actually find out what it is that they love to do, if they have any art to give, all of that stuff. Instead, it's just like follow these topics, study these, and do this exam, and then decide what you want to do and go and do it. And it's like very mechanistic. Yeah, it's too dry and it doesn't work. But yeah, no, it's cool to get your perspective on it too. I think we have some things in common there. So after that, 10-year gap. What made you go back to it? What made you fall back into love with your creativity and art? And how did it feel? Was it like a reunion? How was that?
Yeah, it's interesting. So I actually was following a girl I used to go to high school with. So I've just put in perspective for actually many may not know. I actually went to two different high schools. When I was young, I went a public school system in grade 9 and 12, and I actually attended a boarding school for 2 years in grade 10 and 11. I actually had the opportunity to receive a hockey and arts scholarship to attend a really prestigious boarding school down in Toronto area, and that 2 years completely changed my life. That was that was really what kind of made me, first of all, encouraged me to get into architecture. I had an amazing art teacher there who really just wanted me just to play around. Like I had hundreds of dollars of materials, of art materials. He's like, just go nuts, So just, it does play a part, I think, in a lot of ways with why I decided to go back into it after 10 years. But I just wanted just to throw that out there for those that it is kind of part of the story. But I met this girl at the boarding school. And I've kind of kept track of her over time. She's an entrepreneur as well. She actually makes a lot of art designs for Zazzle. She makes wedding invites and whatnot, and she's made quite a name for herself. And she does courses now, and she's full of boss queen. And she's a Leo too, so I'm like, yeah, girl, like this is freaking awesome. So she was offering a free course during when the pandemic, basically at that point, was declared, providing some just like a free little workshop about, have you ever thought about potentially being an entrepreneur where you may want to incorporate some of your artistic designs into making products? And I had to really think about it for a couple of weeks, being like, am I cut out for that? Like, do I consider myself to be an entrepreneur? Like, I never thought myself to be an entrepreneur type, but I had to ask myself, well, why do I think that? Why is this just me self-limiting beliefs on myself? And the answer is 100% yes. It reminded me of the trauma and the PD, I guess, like just some of the feelings that I felt when I first left university of like, nope, I'm not good enough for this. Like, nope, I'm not good enough. There's too many other artists out there that are way better than me. The whole negative self-talk for sure. But I had to challenge that, when she was offering this free workshop. I was like, first of all, it's free. Like, what do I have to lose really from this experience? And if anything, maybe this might encourage me to get back into my creativity again. And that's exactly what happened. I did the free workshop with her, and we talked as well. Since we do know each other personally, that's when I bought a journal and I started writing down just ideas of like, if I ever start a business, what would I name it? And I'll tell you that within not even a half an hour, I came up with a name of Crown and Palette, and I stuck with it. From that, I was like, wow, like this to me it really does represent me. And I still think it does, even after 2.5 years of registering my business. But that's kind of where I finally started feeling more inclined to start going down the art road again because of her. Her name is Jen, very lovely. Just seeing another boss queen, just like same age as me, just killing it out there with her artwork. I was like, man, like she can do it, like I definitely can do it too, like she really inspired me, encouraged me to just take that leap and just to give it a try. And like I said, like I had a really bad ankle injury from playing hockey, so I had limited, physically wise, like I was not doing well. I wasn't walking very well. It was very frustrating to even just do the smallest of things. And then the pandemic was declared too, so I mean everything was shut down. We weren't able to go to places anymore. I couldn't walk very well, couldn't drive anywhere. So it's like, okay, well, I'm kind of stuck here. So what can I do to kind of keep myself occupied and kind of make myself productive here? And again, that's when I bought my iPad. And that's kind of where, I was like, screw it. Like, just play around. Like, don't set expectations for yourself. Because I think we can do that when we want to start a business, or the idea of potentially starting something so large like that. We can put so much pressure on ourselves to just come up with results so quickly. But it's like, well, what results am I looking for here? What is the goal here out of this? It's like, I don't want to set these expectations on myself. I need to just get the Apple Pencil and just draw whatever the hell that comes to mind. Like, don't be so hard on yourself and so much pressure on yourself. So that's kind of where, I started to just draw whatever I wanted to do. I wasn't thinking too much about a niche at that point. I just drew whatever I wanted. I turned my personal Instagram account into a business account because I already had a following at that point. So I felt it was a good place to start in terms of sharing my work. And that was scary to start sharing some work at that time and not think too much about the numbers of like, oh, I only have this many followers. Well, nobody's going to care, thinking about engagement. And, there's all these things that kind of go through your mind. But I had to get over such very difficult like battles in my head about not caring about what others thought. It was about how I felt and how I felt in my art in that moment, you know? So that's kind of where and how I started Crown and Palette. And for those who are intrigued about why I named it Crown and Palette, I've said this before in other spaces and to others as well. So for those who know, I'm a sun sign in Leo. I'm definitely a Leo. My blonde mane, my big hair is definitely a Leo mane. Leo's one of their symbols is a crown. And I've always been obsessed with crowns. Like every music festival I go to, I'm always wearing a crown. Like you can guarantee I'm wearing a crown. um, and then because of when I started art when I was young, painting was my favorite medium. Like any kind of painting, from watercolor to acrylic. And I've always had a palette. I've always had like this old, like weird, like plastic looking freaking palette, but I took that thing everywhere. Like I was always carrying it everywhere. So I decided to make it Crown and Palette. But thing based on crown, for those who know about the 7 body chakras, from the root sacral all the way up to the crown. The crown is the very top, the crown of your head, and it represents your connection to the divine, to source. And so I like to think that the ideas and all of the downloads I'm getting from the source is what's coming through of my work. So that's another reason I named it as Crown and Palette.
So firstly, I'm very glad you went to that workshop. That was a great decision, and get your creativity kickstarted again. One thing that you mentioned there, which I found interesting, was that you were journaling at the time when you were when you met this woman, and you were kickstarting your creativity again. Yeah, you mentioned journaling, and it just piqued my curiosity because I read this book. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's called The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. Um,
Yes, I
yeah,
have. Yep.
yeah, and it's about, it's mostly about people unblocking their creative blocks, and whether it's over decades of blocks or anything like that. And one of the practices that she sort of recommends in there is the daily pages or the morning pages, which is just journaling, sort of freestyling, free flowing thoughts every day. So yeah, I was wondering, did journaling play a big role in there, or was it just something that you were doing at the time?
At the time, it definitely was more of a practice that I was using. And it was funny because I got the Artist Way. So actually, when I first registered my business, I decided to get a business coach because, honest to God, like, I didn't know anything when it came down to what it means to have a business. Like, where do I start? I was like terrified and a fear of failing. But that was something that my coach got me to do as well, is really just journal and put down ideas. And then eventually I kind of converted it to more of like a spreadsheet type thing, or I started doing things on my computer because I'm on my computer all day long with work. So it seemed to be more of a natural way of doing journaling. But in the beginning, it was writing down in an actual notebook. I don't think I would have came up with my business name so quickly had I not just started writing down keywords or just words that like just resonate with me. And The Artist Way was actually a book that my coach gave me. She was one of it was one of the books, and I
Nice.
still remember reading it. Yeah, it's kind of crazy that you brought that up because yeah, that was one of the books she gave me, um, and that's where I was like, damn, like this to me makes a lot of sense. You know, just writing down your thoughts and just writing down just anything that kind of just flows through your mind and just put it on paper, even if it doesn't make sense. And so her and I have done that as an exercise plenty of times in our sessions. And that's what's really helped me to build some kind of structure with my brand in a lot of ways. So definitely, I mean, now I wish I could say I'm continuing to journal, but it definitely is one of the things that I do struggle with. I do have journals like handy, but in terms of writing things down, I'm terrible. Like I really, really am. I need to be better with that for sure.
Yeah, journaling does help me too. The discipline part of it, but like doing it every day and all that, I also struggle with, but it has helped me tremendously in the past. I definitely recommend people try out journaling if they're even slightly interested or curious about it. It's a great way to just talk with yourself. And one recommendation, if I can make, is that just pretend like literally no one, not pretend, but just know that no one is going to read it. Literally no one else, and even yourself, you don't even have to read it back either. I think that gives it a good freedom to just write things down, no matter how, let's say, ugly the thought is or how stressful something is. It's just get it on paper. It can do wonders for you. Sometimes it's not obvious how it can help you, but it's just getting it on paper can relieve some tension. So last question on this gap in your creativity, because I found it so interesting. Do you think this gap was necessary in some way when you look back now and sort of helping you find yourself?
Absolutely. Honestly, absolutely. when I was in the midst of trying to figure out what to do, because, I did drop out of the program, which was a very difficult time for me, to decide, what career path I want to take next. I can say now that the degree that I ended up going for, I am working full time. So those who don't know, NFTs and art is a side hustle for me. It is not my full-time gig. I am working full time with a degree in what area of specialty that I went to school for. So I know it wasn't completely the wrong move, because I love art. I love creating, but at the same time, I do like having another job or another career that I'm also utilizing other skills that I would not use, say, in an artistic sense. I have a degree in computer science and health science, so kind of bridging the gap between how we can improve our current healthcare systems, at least from a point of view of Canada. So just understanding the relationship between computer systems and human factors, understanding people, and where I work full time right now is I won't give too much, as there's a lot of confidentiality that comes with it. But essentially, I work with a lot of clients, and so I love talking to people, and I love getting to understand, how a user interacts with the system, et cetera. And I do think that does come to play to some extent when it comes to product development, and even with working for Join as well. I think that I work in management, and it's something that I'm kind of using as well in NFTs now. So I know that path that I've taken for myself, that 10-year hiatus, like this definitely was a big part of coming back to it all, because the knowledge and the experience that I've gained through that 10 years of going back to school, doing my degree, working full time for the company that I'm with, all the skills that I've gained from that is now being utilized as well in the context of NFTs with my brand, from managing to structuring to marketing, promoting definitely was one of those things I didn't know beforehand. But I think the sense of community building, I have to do that a lot as well with my team members. So again, like, I think, to answer your question, I do think that it was necessary. It was one of those stepping stones to kind of get myself to be to feeling confident that I am able to do something like this. Like, I can be an entrepreneur and I can be an artist. So who's that? Maybe if I did go back to school, say for graphic design, that definitely was something that crossed my mind at one point. Was like, okay, well, do I want to remove art entirely, or do I want to just, but literally I was like, no, I'm not doing architecture. I'm not going to do graphic design. Like, I'm not going to put myself through this, because I don't think I'm good enough to be in graphic design. So in some ways, to some extent, I do regret it a little bit. I do think I would have been very happy to go along that route, but ultimately I can't regret anything at the end of the day, because where I am now is in one of the best places of my life. NFTs changed my life, my brand, my business, but this community, this group of people, who are, a lot of them who are in this room right now, you guys have changed my life. And who's to say I wouldn't even be here right now if I didn't go through that journey of that 10-year hiatus, you know what I mean? So I just have to be grateful for where I am now at this point, and I do think it was absolutely necessary.
Yeah, that's a really wonderful perspective. I think it's just a good reminder that everything connects together in our lives, no matter where we go and sort of how dark it gets. It sort of connects at some point, and then it sort of changes the definition of regret. Maybe, like, can you really regret that if you're here now? And I think it also shows that it's never too late, to go back to things. Because I know people that have been artistic before, but they've stopped now, and maybe their gap has been longer than yours, but still, I think stories such as yours sort of reminds me that, or tells me that it's never too late. Like, even if you had a long gap in between your creativity, or you lost touch with your passion, or you lost touch with your sort of calling, you can still go back to it at some point, if you're ready. So yeah, I think there's a lot of beautiful things in your journey. So now let's dig a bit into your journey with spirituality and astrology. So could you describe your journey with spirituality? Sort of, when did you start getting a spiritual sense, and was it always linked with astrology straight away, or how did that connect to each other?
It's very interesting. Yeah, this is a great question. Definitely is very connected with my art, and plays a big part. So I would say to think right off the bat, 'cause I know when I was young, there's so many things I don't remember a lot of things when I was young. I was very connected to nature. Nature. I've lived in a very small town up north, like I said, and I practically lived in the boonies, right? Like, nature is a big part of my life. I always had a very strong connection to Mother Gaia, to the earth. So I knew that was not a coincidence. And then I was introduced to astrology by a few people from an old friend back in the day, and she was very knowledgeable about astrology. And it's she kind of really piqued my interest with it because it's something I like to do. Is kind of like I like knowing why or how things happen or why people do things they do or say or communicate. Like I like trying to understand people, and ultimately wanted to learn more about who am I, like why am I the way I am, things that I cannot explain, or at least just like how I interact with the world or how other people see me. Like it's such an interesting way of looking at the world and yourself. And astrology really is it to me. Astrology is a tool to help you find like to really just be in tune with who you are and to be unapologetic about it in a lot of ways. And so when I learned more about Leo, I mean, I'm a sun in Leo, but I learned that there's more than just your sun sign, and that just blew my mind. I was like, wait, what? We have more than one zodiac sign? Like, I've been told my whole life that I'm just a Leo and I encapsulate all of the qualities of a Leo, but that's just actually not true. And I was like, wait, what? Like, you're blowing my mind right now. And that's kind of where I kind of dove much deeper into astrology. And I'm not an astrologer by any means. Definitely not. I do have the pleasure of being able to interact with plenty of astrologers, especially on Instagram, and some of them have converted as well. And I learn something new from them every single day. Astrology is one of those things where you'll never know everything 100% about, and that's just something that I love. It's same with my job. It's what I do with my job. I'll never know everything about it, and I think that's what makes it very intriguing for me, and it's never boring. Um, so astrology is one of those things where it's like, oh my God, I just want to absorb everything. Like I want to know, or how can I, absorb all of this? And it's taken years. I've been studying astrology for years. So when people ask me like, how do you know so much about astrology? It's honestly, it's not something I learned overnight. Like it's something that has, been reading books and books and books and articles. And even just taking that knowledge I've learned from all these different resources and applying it to real life. I love meeting people. I'm such a social person, as many people who are in this room know. I just love being in a room and just meeting people. I like playing the game of what is their sun sign. I like I like playing that game a little bit, and it's quite fun. And there's been times where I've actually been right, and just kind of getting a bit of an insight as to what makes them this sign, or like learning about them and their background. It's just to me, I think it's just a very fascinating topic, and that's kind of where I dove a little bit further than this. So I was always interested more about actually that will lead a little bit to martial arts. I know we're going to get into that, but just the idea of the mind, body, soul, and how we can really connect to ourselves. So I really do think that we have a lot of the answers that we need within us, and it's not naturally we want to find answers externally in a lot of ways, but I think we do have the tools. We have the right tools in place, and if we actually start trusting ourselves more, that we actually will. We're more intuitive than we think. We have the answers more than we think. And so when I started to realize, like, to have that kind of perspective, I started to trust myself more with my creativity, if that makes sense. Instead of thinking like, oh, this idea seems kind of stupid, or people are not going to like this. It's like I was very much a people pleaser for many years, and I finally just, I definitely still do in some ways, but I do try to take a step back and be like, no, this is not about what others think. Like, how do I feel about this idea, and do I intuitively feel like this is something that I want to explore? And in a lot of ways, that's really tapping into my potential, my inner power, and being authentic. We use that word quite often as well, but it's true. If you're showing up as your most authentic self, then people are going to see that. So I think spirituality in a ways, from learning from astrology to learning about the 7 body chakras, learning about the divine feminine versus divine masculine, understanding the energies from that, it's allowed me to understand, just who I am, and that I'm enough, that, I am unique and I'm different, and that's beautiful, So if I did not dive deep into many aspects of spirituality or astrology, I have no idea what kind of person I would be right now.
How would you sort of suggest people get started with getting to know themselves through an astrological lens?
I think a good start, and I think I failed to mention this before, or I may have mentioned much earlier in the space, is the first time I got a natal chart reading. I think what people need to keep in mind is to be open-minded. I know for for anybody who hears the word astrology, there are plenty of people who dismiss it. And that's natural, given, there are a lot of skeptics, and that's totally normal, where it's, we're entitled to, our perspective and our opinion, of course, but I do think it does come with a lot of being open-minded to it. All of us are made up of energy. We're made up of, water is a big part of who we are and physically wise, right? And to think, like the moon, the planets, like to not think that any of the planets affect us on on that kind of level is, to me, is mind-boggling, so it's just another perspective on it. But I think getting a natal chart reading actually brings you down to, where the planets were at the time when you were born, and location. You have to know that information, of course. For a natal chart reading, you need to know the exact birth time. That determines your ascendant, your rising sign. But you need to have the place of birth, your time of birth, and of course your actual date of birth, to get your natal chart reading done. And I would recommend doing it with a professional astrologer who does this quite often, and I can definitely recommend plenty. And it's interesting because I've actually gone in my natal chart done by multiple astrologers, not just one, because every astrologer has their own perspective and they have their own practice when it comes to astrology. And I like getting different perspectives from people. So I've had my natal chart reading. As soon as I got that done, it just completely opened my world to, oh my God. So, for example, I'm a sun in Leo. Leos are known to be very proud. They're ruled by the sun. It's all about the self, So on the shadow end, a lot of people tend to see Leo as very self-absorbed. They're selfish. Other end of things, we're very caring, loving. Family is very important to us in terms of values. We have a big heart. But I was like, there's so much more to me than just that. Like, there's so much more than that. I have such a sense for adventure. I am spontaneous. I'm impulsive. They don't hear those types of key words with Leo very much. And then when I started learning more about my chart, I realized I have a moon in Sagittarius. Sagittariuses are exactly what I just mentioned. They're very spontaneous. They're ruled by the house of philosophy and higher learning. They're always super, super into learning more about the world, and they want to travel the world. And that's very much who I am. I also have an ascendant and a rising sign in Virgo. Virgos can be very, very self-critical of themselves, but I think they're one of the most underrated signs. I do think they're very structured. They're very organized. It can be a little almost OCD sometimes, and that's definitely me when it comes to a career. I'm very, very structured in that way. But if you were to, want to meet me in a social setting, it's like I'm actually super bubbly and open-minded and super I'm not very rigid. So just different keywords of some of these signs kind of just open my world a little bit. But oh wow, this really does feel like that's totally me, in a lot of ways. So then I started accepting a lot of these parts of who I am, and that it's nothing to be ashamed of, this is uniquely who I am. So I think the natal chart can really open people's minds a little bit. And I think just, again, it won't work. It won't really be beneficial unless you're open-minded to the idea of it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think open-mindedness is a great keyword there. I personally haven't explored astrology that much. I mostly just absorbed it by osmosis through hanging out with you and and everyone else that in our crew that does astrology. But yeah, I should probably do a natal chart reading and see where I stand. One sort of hesitation that I guess I know some people have, and I know I have as well, with just systems such as astrology, or whether it's personality tests as well, is I'm just afraid of trapping myself in a box, or putting a label on myself saying I'm a that, and therefore I do this. Yeah, that's one of my hesitations, because I don't want to label myself too early, or too much. So yeah, I don't know. What do you think about that? How can we use astrology without sort of trapping ourselves in a box?
Well, that's definitely a topic that's come up plenty of times, and I totally agree with you. And I think that it's a perspective that we definitely don't want to put ourselves into a box that that these are the qualities of me and that's it. You know what I mean? That there's no room for growth and there's no room for that's just not the case. So essentially, I think of this astrology, like I said, as more of a tool. It kind of gives us a little bit of insights as to these are the different signs and the different planets. And something that to keep in mind is that each planet has its own identity as well, and that they play a big part in this as well. But I think, again, the natal chart is just a tool to help navigate the different areas of life that you may or may not have difficulties in, or areas that you may be very successful with or come very easy to you. So I'll give an example of a specific opposition in my chart. They call it opposition. So there is a major opposition between Capricorn and Cancer in my chart. I will be very, very high level about it so that I don't lose you. But essentially, Capricorn is in the house of my father, and the Cancer, I believe, is in the house of my mother. And when the astrologer looked at my chart, she immediately knew that my parents were not together. She knew that the opposition and tension, the energy from that opposition, she knew that my parents were no longer together, and that I had a lot of issues growing up, going through a very nasty family divorce. It wasn't a fun experience whatsoever, but I do think in a lot of ways that despite my family separating, it was the best decision that they could make for our family. But it just kind of blew my mind when she told me, she's like, you went through like a very traumatic family event. Your parents get divorced, like we kind of went into this a little bit more, and she kind of explained it to me in a little bit in that way. And the way that she kind of explained to me is, based on, we got to think about 3 different levels here. I know it can be quite complicated without a visual, but we have the 12 zodiac signs. I think we all are aware of the 12 zodiacs from Aries being the first one to being Pisces being the last. Then we got to look a little bit deeper than that. We go into the planets. Each planet has a specific zodiac sign in that planet. If you understand all the planets, that definitely makes it easier, but I'm just saying from more of a high level perspective. And then you go down into the 12 houses. So when you look at a natal chart, it looks like a little pie chart. And there's 12 pieces in that pie representing 12 of the zodiacs and 12 houses. The houses pretty much represent an area of life, whether that could be home and family structures. One could be about money, financial, travel, higher learning. Like there's 12 different houses, and each of these planets and zodiac signs are falling to uniquely in some of these houses. And so the way she explained it to me, based on the house of father and the house of mother, was where she saw that opposition, that like, wow, like your family went through it was not a very fun time for you. I can see. I said, no, it definitely wasn't. So it was a very scary and very weird situation. Like, how the heck did my astrologer know that? How did she know by looking at my chart, right? But again, it doesn't mean that we're able to identify every major life event, but it definitely can be a tool to help navigate, what are some significant points in our life that has happened to us. And then it kind of gives you like a bit of a forecasting idea of like, these are some of the energies that are coming to play in these specific houses and these areas of life, what to look out for and how you can potentially navigate it. There's a lot of free will with this. I think people may not realize, not everything is fully set in stone here. Again, it's just used as a tool and a resource for you to help understand all the different cosmic energies that are happening all at the same time, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I feel like we should have probably another space all about astrology, and we'll get the best astrologers on, including yourself.
We
and
need
just talk
Dia.
about it.
We need
Yeah,
Dia
we
in
need.
here. French Witch. I don't think she's in here right now, but we need her 1000%.
Yeah, maybe I'll do another episode all about astrology. Get the best people on top. But no, that was really interesting. Thanks for explaining. I like the idea of using it as a tool. I think that's, if I was to use it, that's how I would use it. That's how I use other systems, just personality types and all of that. I think you don't have to like fully identify with it and get trapped by it, in a way, but using it as a tool freely and to just learn more about yourself, that sounds like a good idea to me. And that the fact that you said, there's more free will to it than people realize, that's also good to hear for me. So yeah, no, thank you. I think I'm going to do a lot more homework on this and get the astrology space at some point. So let's segue a bit into martial art. You're a martial artist, for people that may not know. So firstly, which martial arts do you practice, and have you always done that one?
Yeah. So I train only specifically in the art of Muay Thai. So all body weapons, so including your knees to elbows to kicks. I joined Muay Thai about 7 years ago. Prior to Muay Thai, I am a hockey player. I've been playing hockey since I was living from a small town up north where it's really cold. It's pretty natural. Pretty much everybody plays hockey up there. But at one point, I really wanted to try something different. I wanted to challenge myself, and I've had a couple friends mention to me before, hey, you know what? I think you would really like it. And I was like, I don't know, like I'm a little bit intimidated because I do think in a lot of ways it's a male-dominated sport, at least at the time when I was, thinking about the possibility. And I would make excuses for myself that like, no, like I'm not, I would just be embarrassing myself to even try. It sounds ridiculous, but that's literally what I was thinking about time. But I was like, you know what, like there are women that do train martial arts, and I'm sure I can find at least one girl at a gym that may want to partner up with me, and it'll be more of a smoother transition in a process. And that's exactly what happened. I met a girl. I'm still very close with her. She's actually in Italy, by the way. Gianmarco and Andrea. She's in Florence. Like she moved to Florence from Canada, so I have every excuse to go to Italy to go visit her. So that means I can visit you guys. But she was my partner for Muay Thai for the first year being at the gym, and that really helped me to not feel so intimidated, to not be judged or to be like criticized by some of the really like advanced fighters at some of these gyms. And eventually I was like, you know what, like why am I feeling like this? Like I played hockey when I was young, and I honestly played with all guys. I started off playing hockey with all guys. It was not all girls at the time. It's now definitely there's more women that play hockey, especially in my hometown. It's very much a thing now. A lot of women teams, but at the time it wasn't as popular, and so I was kind of stuck with playing with the boys. It was intimidating too. So it's like, and when I said to myself like, oh no, I don't want to do martial arts because it's mostly male dominated, it's just like that's ridiculous. Like you did that with hockey, so who's to say you can't do it again with martial arts, right? So it's just making excuses for myself at the end of the day. And it's like, no, step into your power, try something new, take a risk, and just have fun with it, and don't put so much pressure on yourself. And you know what? It was one of the best decisions I ever made. I love Muay Thai. I've always been very competitive. I'm very competitive in nature. Playing definitely is a part of it. But there's something about Muay Thai that it's a different kind of like competitiveness. You're competing against yourself, really. You're challenging your mind, body, and soul to potentially mentally prepare yourself for if you ever to be in a bad situation where you could be in the wrong place to potentially competing. I've never competed, by the way. I've never competed in a fight before. I'm too afraid of getting a concussion, to be honest with you. That's my excuse to everybody. But there's something really empowering about being able to defend yourself. And not just from a physical standpoint. It actually has helped me develop more of a backbone mentally, where if anybody, if I feel in any way that someone's trying to push me, or they're trying to manipulate me, or just anything along the lines of like I don't want people to ever think I'm a pushover, so definitely I am not a pushover. Good luck. So I think it has really allowed me to evolve into more of a stronger person, and not just physically, more mentally. So that was something that I did not expect with training Muay Thai arts. I usually go 2 to 3 times a week, and it's such a wicked workout. Like it really is it's an awesome workout. And they have this like it's very much a community too, and that's something a lot of people may not realize. At least where I am in Canada, the Muay Thai community is very, very supportive, and community is very important to them. They're doing community events all the time. They're always getting together. Like even fighters from other gyms where they compete against each other, there's no bad blood there. It's all respect. And that's something I deeply admire about martial arts. And I have such an appreciation for even just watching UFC, for example. I never was interested in it before, but now that I actually do train the art of Muay Thai, I can understand, why it is so popular, and why so many people watch. And I look at it differently now than I used to. And so I have a lot of gratitude for just being a part of something so special as martial arts, where I feel like I'm a part of something. I feel like a part of a community who actually cares about my well-being. And I feel like such a powerful human, much more powerful than before.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah, definitely sounds like a big part of your life now, which is good. And that assertiveness, or backbone, as you called it, sort of that, I think just that by itself is such an important sort of teaching that you can get from it. Because I think especially artists, we tend to be more on the softer side of things. And I think that's probably just how it is, like with the nature of art and artists, like being sensitive to things. A lot of people tend to be more on the softer side of things, which obviously there's nothing wrong with it, but you can end up being a pushover if you haven't developed that sort of assertiveness side of yourself. So it's cool that you say it has developed that side of you. What about the discipline part of it? Did you always have that discipline side before, or did you develop it through your training?
It's a very good question, actually. That's a very good word that I actually didn't mention before. I think discipline naturally has come to me from a young age, but I do think that ever since starting martial art, that it has increased my discipline. Like it's evolved to a level of discipline. Like even just showing up to the gym after you had such a long day of work, and especially I work my full-time job and I do my NFTs and everything like that. It's like I'm always exhausted, like all the time. So when you add those other things that you're doing in a day, and just to be disciplined enough to even just push yourself to go to the gym after such a long work day, like I'm proud of myself being able to evolve that discipline to a whole new level where like I'm really gonna put my body through some pretty it's gonna be torture a little bit, but you know what? Oh my god, it's gonna clear my mind. It's going to like my aura just feels so much stronger after I go and I put time for myself. It's not about like that's the thing, like when you're investing in your body, you're investing in your health. It's still that's very much what it's about, and I'm that's the time that I'm investing in myself and my health so that I can continue to do the things that I'm passionate about and be creative, because I do think that there is a connection between if I'm not putting time into my body, whether that's yoga, martial arts, or hockey, like that's just my way of moving and feeling good about body. And it's different for everybody, but I do think it's very well connected to my creativity. If I'm not moving or I'm not giving myself the nourishment and the movement in my body, I have a hard time actually being creative. Um, it's very well connected. So if I know I'm having a block, it means I'm not investing enough time in my body, my mind, my body, and my soul. So again, like they're interconnected in a lot of ways. So to answer your question, discipline, I think for those who are in this room that do know me, like I have a very high discipline. Like I work really hard to be where I am, and that discipline is something that I always will like be patting myself on the back for, that I do have discipline within me. But I do think that training something such as like a very disciplined type of sport, such as Muay Thai, I do think has evolved a lot to a much more like a large, like higher level for sure.
That's really awesome. And I find interesting the interconnectivity they say between sort of movement, exercise, sport, martial arts, and creativity. I think traditionally that's not something that most people think is an actual connection at all. Um, and I have many, many artist friends, and a lot of them just, well, a lot of them don't do any exercise at all, and that's fine. But it's cool to hear sort of your perspective on it. That actually, the more you move your body and the more you engage your physical body, the more your creativity can get engaged as well. I think that's a really cool perspective that doesn't really get mentioned a lot in the artist world.
And that can be as
Um,
simple as like even just like going puck, right? It doesn't have to be anything strenuous. That looks differently for everybody. Like what is considered something that's your time and energy into investing in your body. If that means like eating a really good meal, like cooking yourself like a really healthy meal, to again just even going for a walk and going into nature, like that's another example, right? Mine just so happens to be a very intense way of doing things, but that's just I guess how I roll, right? But and that's yeah, exactly like you mentioned. Like I don't think it doesn't always get to be mentioned. But I mean, again, like we're all of us have our own process and how we can channel our creativity, and this is just my way of doing so.
yeah, definitely. So, would you recommend people to learn martial arts, and like, would you have any pointers when people are starting?
Yeah, you know what? Like I don't think it's a bad idea. In general, I think to like in general, I think it's never a bad idea to learn self defense. I don't think it doesn't matter like who you are. I think it's always good and empowering to know that you can defend yourself in any kind of bad situation. Whether that's martial, like if you're training Muay Thai, for example, like if you're actually training in the art of Muay Thai, like to jujitsu, to BJJ, like in general, like it's just if that interests you, great. But otherwise, like even just attending a self defense workshop, I can recommend that to anybody. I can guarantee you'll feel empowered after. It may seem like, oh my God, it may seem intense, but it's just in those situations where you may be in a bad situation, you're going to be thanking yourself by learning the techniques necessary to help you in those situations. I don't think it's ever a bad idea.
Great. So, for our last little section of questions, let's shift a bit towards the Web3 side of things. So, from the start of your involvement in NFT space, did you see yourself gathering like a big following as you have now and being a community leader? Like, was that something that you saw coming, sort of being a sort of a leader of some sort, or was that something that you just stumbled upon?
That just happened. That definitely was not planned by any means. Like, when I was told that you need to get a Twitter account, I was like, "Ugh, are you kidding me?" I'm not kidding. I was, like, dreading it. Dreading getting a Twitter account because 'cause I've never been a huge fan of Twitter to begin with. Like, I've had friends who've used it in the past, but, you know, I had to bite the bullet and just get it. Um, and at the time when I got Twitter and when I joined NFTs is actually at the time where I actually moved back home for the last year. That was a very difficult phase of my life. And jumping into NFTs, I think in a lot of ways I'm like, man, should I have done that? Should I have just moved and also gone into NFTs at the same time? Was that a good move? And it's like, you know what? It probably was because I was already in a transition period that like nothing made sense. My routine did not make sense. Like nothing was making sense, right? NFTs to me didn't make sense at that time, right? So I'm like, this probably was the best time to engage in a brand new adventure, such as crypto, NFTs, So to answer that, definitely not. That was definitely not something I anticipated by any means. I just wanted to dive into something new because I work in IT. I have an IT background and I love learning new things. I like understanding new technologies, and I've always had some kind of interest and fascination with crypto. I know a lot of people who are in the blockchain technology in terms of a career. So I'm like, okay, at some point in time, I need to learn this. Like, there's obviously I keep seeing it pop up like in multiple locations. So obviously, maybe I'm meant to learn and go down this venture at some point. Um, but I knew nothing about building building a community is one thing. I mean, Instagram I think has helped a little bit, with trying to build followers and try and gain a little following. And I could definitely say that I do have such a lovely group of people who go to my page on Instagram specifically just to look for my work. And I think it's really beautiful that I can do that and I can share some really beautiful insights with my art with so many that, that appreciate it. So I said, okay, well, I'm sure this may be the same thing with Twitter. And it's been a very different experience, but it's been a lot of trial and error. Like there was no one said to me, oh, you have to do this or you have to do that. It was a very much just spending hours and hours and hours on Twitter every single day, just figuring it out and just engaging and finding artists that I loved. And, I got quite addicted to it for the first while too, is a little bit too much, to be honest. In a lot of ways, I'm like, how the heck did I do that? Like, how many hours in a day was I spending on Twitter? I know, but I got so into it. I was loving it, loved meeting new people. And I'd in general, cool person, whether that's on, through a phone or not, is I love meeting new people. So, and I moved home too, right? Like I moved from Toronto. I lived in Toronto for a very long time and I moved back home living with my family for the first time since I was like 17, like long time, never living with my parents and back to moving with my parents. It was very much, I felt a little bit isolated in a lot of ways and I didn't have any friends around. Like not all my friends like kind of moved outside of my hometown. I only had my family really. So it felt very isolating, especially with it being in the middle of pandemic still at that time. And I really felt like I needed to make new connections. I felt this like urge and need to want to connect with people. So it kind of became a little bit of an addiction, but that addiction has helped me in a lot of ways with building the community that I have now, and including a lot of you beautiful gems that are in the audience right now, considered like amazing friends. Had I not spent time to engage and to network with other artists who I would know, right? Like I would to say like I'm almost at 20,000 on Twitter, like I would have never guessed that. And it's just I had this conversation actually with Courtney and in a different space the other day that you know did I anticipate getting that many that large of a following? Definitely not. I've had people tell me, oh, you're an influencer, or you know you seem to be like you're a leader of community engagement, and you're just just like the guru with these types of things. And I usually shut that down really fast because I don't consider myself any of those. um, I think it's due to a number of factors, and I do think there are a lot of people who are doing the exact same thing as me. They're engaging every single day with artists, and sometimes that following number or whatever just doesn't really add up. In a lot of ways, I still don't know. I still don't understand how some people don't have a higher following than others. I don't fully know the mechanics or the algorithm itself either. Am I grateful to have such a large reach? Absolutely. And I use that advantage to help support as many artists as possible. One retweet can make such a difference, and I can help someone get a sale, and that's like the best outcome that could come out of that. Whether I have 2,000, 5,000, like I don't care. Like if I have a group of people like yourselves here in this space who I feel very connected to, and I feel like have a genuine loving connection to, like that's all I could really want from this. But again, having the following I have now, like I'm very grateful to even reach that many people within the last year. Like that's a lot of people. So I count my blessings to be able to have that many connections, and I use it to, using it for good as much as I possibly can so that I can support all of you as much as possible.
Well, you're definitely great at it. And yeah, you have amassed this big following over the past year. Yeah, I guess, and this is sort of like maybe the best word for it isn't responsibility, or maybe it is, I don't know. But there's like a responsibility or like a weight that comes with it, with just having so many people follow you. I mean, I don't have as much as you, but it's a weird dynamic that I think a lot of people now are finding themselves in, where they didn't mean to get so big. They were just sharing their art, and now they got suddenly thousands and thousands of people just interacting. And yeah, it's sort of I feel like it's something people have to be either prepared for or sort of willing to do. Whether it's you're getting tons of messages or replies, or people projecting things on you, or people expecting you to do things, or all sorts of stuff like that. So, do you think? I mean, I know you said you don't like being called a community leader, but do you think you'll always be a type of a leader in some way or another in the Web3 space, or do you just want to be like an artist that just does their own thing?
I mean, ultimately, that was what I first came here to do, right? But I've always considered myself to be a leader. I've always had this, like, I've been told, and I've told myself too, like, I think one of the best qualities I have is a natural ability to be a leader. And I'm very, that's something that, I take very seriously. And, with my full-time job, that's what I do now. I'm in management, and, I was working my way to be that, but it was always in the cards. Like my management and my bosses always knew that I was going to be a leader. Like they were working me to be that point, because they knew that was who I meant to be, is to be a leader of some kind. In terms of being, in Web3 to NFTs, you know, I never considered myself to be a leader because I didn't think that maybe I was in a position to be a leader. I guess in a sense, when you look at it, like, I've only been an artist or a digital artist for the past 2.5 years. Even though I've been doing art my whole life, it's like I look at the time, I was looking at like, well, I'm not like artist by trade. It's like that's not my gig. I'm not a full-time artist. There are so many other established artists that are here that to me at the time just made, it was like, those, wouldn't they be the leaders? Wouldn't they be, but my mind has shifted. My perspective has kind of shifted on that a lot over the last year. It's like, it doesn't matter, how long you've been doing it for. You can be whoever you want to be. So over time, I got more confident that maybe I can make a difference in the Web3 ecosystem. And that shed of light was actually from the Chester team, who are now is Coin. They collected one of my works back in the spring. And then when I discovered, who they are and their mission and what they were trying to do, and then they actually onboarded me to be a part of being a community mod and a leader, that was when I really started to believe it. That's when I was like, wow, like, they actually believe that I'm capable of being a leader in this space. And I didn't believe it at the time myself, but ever since, joining with them, I was working as a volunteer. And actually I wanted to share that I'm officially working for them as a contractor as of this week. I've been working and volunteering for them since the spring of last year. And I'm happy to say that they've officially onboarded me, and I'm very, very happy. It's it's definitely been in the talks for quite some time, but it was a very easy decision for me. But they were definitely a stepping stone to really starting to feel like maybe I can be a leader in this space.
Congratulations on that. That's great. And
Thank
yeah,
you.
I think you definitely do have what it takes to be a leader. And so yeah, I'm just excited to see where it goes. Let's see where we are 1 year from now. Who knows? Maybe you got your own little community going on. Who knows?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I honestly, like I say, it's not just the join community. I think it's a mixture of just the community that I've like and the network that I've built from day one. Every one of you has made me feel more confident in being who I want to be and who I'm meant to be, and that you all back me up and support me. I've been, you make me feel confident that I can be a leader, and that it's just not like, it's totally in the cards. Like all of you have made me feel very supported to go along that path. and I feel very much aligned with that path. So I can say that this is not all me, and it's not just all joy, and it's definitely the community has definitely pushed me, not pushed me, but has like, I don't know what the right word is. Like, you all encourage me to take that path. Yes, absolutely.
That's amazing. I'm glad to hear it. And so sort of one last main question that I have for you is just sort of a generic question, but I want to know what your perspective is on it. What's one piece of advice you could give to an artist who is just wanting to get involved with NFTs, let's say today? Let's say they just want to get start today. What advice could you give them?
Absolutely. I think, that one of the best pieces of advice I was given prior to the space was be yourself, first of all. Don't get caught up in what everybody else is doing. Just be you, show up as your unique, authentic self, first and foremost. And then I say to spend time to build your community. I can't stress this enough. I do feel in a lot of ways that I would not be where I am or the success that's come my way without building such a strong support network and building my community network. I do believe that we need to take some time to build that so that we can, by sharing our art, for example, we want to have that community to back us up and to support us. And we do the same in return, that from a marketing, from a promoting standpoint, like we need that to kind of get things rolling. And it ultimately is to feel a part of something, and it just to make you feel like you're not alone. We're all here, we're all, trying to make it in this space, but we're all doing it together. So I think having that mentality, that perspective of like, we're all in this together. Of course you're there for yourself, and as you should, but I think we need to come into this with open arms of wanting connections and to build a network and not just solely focus on just promoting your art. That would be one of the biggest pieces of advice I can give.
Yep, that's key information right there. Be yourself, be authentic, and build up your community. I think, yeah, if I was to give any advice, that'd probably be it as well. And that's what I've been doing, and it's been slowly working. So yeah, very key information. Thanks for sharing. It's been great talking with you, Andrea. What have you got coming up in the future? Anything exciting you can tell us about what's coming?
That's a good question. I've been actually pretty low key in the last couple of months. For those who have known me from the beginning, I was just a major workhorse from the last year. So much so that, here's another piece of advice: just pace yourself. Honestly, like NFTs, Web3, there's going to be so many opportunities that are going to come your way, and it's going to be very hard to say no. It's like, why wouldn't you want to say no, right? To help develop yourself, your brand, etc. But within reason, you need to find that balance that works for you, or you're going to burn out. And I can confidently say, and there's a few people here who know, I have burnt out so many times in the last year. So many times that at one point I took almost a month off of social media in this past January. And at the time I was like, I needed to get away from all of it. And I don't want to ever get to that point again. And the only way to do that is to pace myself and to start being more selective with certain projects or opportunities that come my way. And if it doesn't align with me, and asking myself if I have energy to be able to provide and to invest in such an opportunity. Otherwise, again, you're going to burn yourself out to the point where, like, were you able to be fully invested in the project when you have 50% battery versus 100? It's just something to think about, that you need to take a step back sometimes, take breaks off social media if you have to. Setting boundaries too is very important. It's something that I practice for myself now too, because otherwise I just burn out. And again, like, to go back to the point about when you have a large following, that means more and more and more notifications, they start racking up, and it's so hard to keep up with. So yeah, you get the large reach, but you also have more you have to absorb on a daily basis, and you have to set boundaries for yourself, where I can't handle this all day. I can't handle all of it today, and that's okay. And ultimately, if you have those genuine loving connections, they're going to understand. And I think, over time, you're going to develop that circle or that group of people that are loyal, that are loving, and that are understanding. And that, you can't cater to, like, I have 20,000, like, I talk to 20,000 people in a day. That's impossible. You eventually start to figure out what your circle is and really invest your time in that circle. So taking all these things into consideration, that your health is number one, your mental health is always number one, It should never be sacrificed. Otherwise, you're going to put yourself in a pretty low point position, and that's definitely something that I experienced, and I don't wish it upon anybody. So um, I'm just trying to go back to what your original question was. I kind of went on a tangent there.
No, that was great. Burnout is a very real thing, and I've experienced it multiple times too in the past year. And yeah, it can. I I think actually most of the time I don't realize I'm burnt out until I take a break, and the break sort of comes either accidentally or through some event that I have to now be with my phone, or I have no signal or something, and then I realize actually Twitter has been taking so much of my energy, and obviously it's the energy can be a force of good, as well. And you can
Mm-hmm.
network, build a community, and you're selling your artworks and you're doing tons of great things through that energy in Twitter and social media in general. And even if it's just responding to messages, that can also take energy, which can also, it can be energy for good. But at the same time, breaks are so essential because, especially in the NFT world, things don't stop. Like when you go to sleep, you wake up, and in the time you've been asleep, so many things have happened. You've missed out on some big project, and some other people are talking about something you don't know. And that feeling is like it's like an unhinged feeling. It's just this constantly going on. I think it's quite unnatural. So yeah,
Absolutely.
breaks
Yeah.
are super, super necessary. Like even if you have to force yourself to take 2 days without Twitter, super necessary.
I just remembered now the original question, any projects going on. So it was kind of going to my point of like, invest in things that you have the energy for, right? So I used to say yes, 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 yes to freaking everything from like August to December. I did way too much. I was so burnt out by Christmas, only sleeping like so many hours in a day. But can I say that, saying yes to all of this has benefited me? Absolutely, definitely. But for the detriment of my health, not so much. So that was a learning experience. That was, I can't look back and regret that I've said yes to so many projects because, first of all, I'm very grateful for all those opportunities. But at the same time, it's kind of figuring out, what can I manage with my workload and with my energy levels at that time to really have conversations with yourself a lot, especially with FOMO, like you just mentioned. There's always going to be another project. There's always going to be another opportunity that's going to present itself to you. And it's okay if you miss out on some opportunities. It's, because maybe it wasn't meant for you, right? Just you have to put that into mind that like if your energy is not there to invest in a project, is it really meant for you at that time? Something to think about. But currently, right now, I've been very low key because I've been a lot focused because I just moved recently. I'm back to Ottawa. I used to live here before in the past, but I have a big goal in mind. I'm hoping to buy a condo in the fall. I can confidently say that NFTs is the biggest reason for ever becoming a reality for me. Prior to last year, I thought there was no way I was going to be able to afford a house or afford any kind of real estate. It was never in the cards for me. I've always had a lot of student debt over my head for many, many years. And I can confidently say that NFTs has changed that narrative. And I'm very happy to say that this is becoming a reality for me. And I'm hoping to have that by the fall. So I just moved recently. So instead of taking on a million projects at once, it just does sense. So I decided to slow it down with NFTs, I'm still creating, but without a huge project. But I have one project coming up. Actually just delayed not long ago, but it's actually cool. It was actually I've worked with this gentleman before. We're doing an NFT tarot collection. So there's going to be 72 artists doing one card of the tarot deck. And building as a collection on Foundation. So I'm really stoked for this. I'm huge on tarot, tarot cards, oracle cards, all of that sort from a spirituality standpoint. So I picked a card from the tarot collection that I'm yet to design. I haven't done it yet, but it's looking like it's going to be the first drop will be whatever May, probably end of May at some point. I picked the Tower card, and I mentioned the Tower earlier on purpose because I feel like the Tower is one of the most scary cards in the tarot deck. When someone gets a Tower card, they're like, "Oh my god, shit's gonna go down." That's usually what it means, but it's nothing to be scared of. It means that there is a major life transition that's happening, and that's very much what's happening in my life right now. So I really feel that was the perfect card to pick. And that to me would make the most sense from a genetic standpoint that I can really channel all the things that I'm going through from for my transition into that piece of work. So you'll anticipate seeing that at the end of May. But besides that, like I mentioned, I officially joined the Join team as of this week. So I'll be working for them more often than I was before. So I'm investing more time with them. as this was also a major reason for me to be able to financially afford to be able to hopefully buy real estate in the near future. So that's what's up with me coming up.
That's amazing, Andrea. Yeah, I'm looking forward to the tarot collection. Yeah, no, thank you very much for being here with me today talking. I think a lot of people will get inspired by this conversation, and there's many gems and lessons in it. And yeah, it's just a pleasure to know you as an individual. Like you are constantly stepping things up, and you have a lot of energy. And obviously, I know like everyone burns out and all that, but you are constantly stepping things up, and it's really inspiring to see your journey. I've seen it like last year, and yeah, I'm excited to see what else is coming and everything else. So yeah, happy to know you, happy to have you on this conversation.
Thank you so much, Nima, once again for having me as a guest on your podcast. Again, like I mentioned, I've always enjoyed your podcast from the very beginning. I know we're going to have so many more amazing people that you're going to interview here, but it has been such a pleasure as well just to witness your journey over the year. I know that just even this venture alone with the podcast, it's a lot of work and a lot of energy, but I can tell that you're very passionate about it and you're amazing at it. Like you're such an amazing host with your podcast, and again, I'm very grateful, and also grateful that we connected so early on in the space. And you've been such an amazing friend. I gave just for those who know, his birthday was last. He's an Aries, so I gave him my very first digital collage piece I ever made. It reminded me of the Aries archetype. Very empowering, very like just the fire feisty like energy, but just the journey into the unknown. And every time I look at one of your works, Nima, I just feel like I'm on a new journey. I'm embarking on a new journey somewhere, and I don't know where I'm going to end up, but I know it's going to be a really cool, dope place to be. So that's how I like to think of you, your work, and just you're such a lovely person inside and out. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. And that gift still blows my mind. It blew my mind when you gave me it, and it still blows my mind. I don't think I'll be able to ever properly articulate like how much I appreciate that gesture. But it'll be in my collection forever. So yeah, and if the archaeologists can look it up later. But
and one day I'm gonna be able to afford to buy one of your pieces on foundation. You're top of my list for collecting. You know this already.
and yeah, likewise, me for you too. Looking forward to that day. So yeah, is there anything else you want to say? Any closing remarks, or should we leave it here?
I think that's pretty well it. I just want to say thank you again to everybody who's here. There's a few of you in here who are here from the very beginning. Like y'all are freaking amazing. Like I'm so grateful for everybody who's here and anybody who's listening right now. I really embarked on our journey thinking that I wasn't good enough, and that Nima, like you mentioned, that it's never too late to do what you're passionate about. But ultimately, it's you. If you're the one that's stopping yourself at the end of the day, and I was doing that for 10 years, and I can't say I've regretted, because I wouldn't be where I am right now, right? Like it was all part of my unique journey. But I would say that if you really want to take a leap of faith, do it. It's changed my life. It's changed the course of my life. And I think that it's doing that for so many of us who are in this room right now, and for those who are now, the possibilities are endless. Just go for it. Don't think twice. There's a loving community here who's here to support you along the way. That's all I have to say.
Absolutely, just go for it. I think we'll end the session here. Thank you, everyone that was part of this room. Andrea, thank you again for giving your journey, telling your story. You have a fantastic story, and it's fascinating. And thanks for sharing it.
Thank you, everyone, for being here again. I know some of you were here from the very beginning. I have no idea how much it means to me. I love you guys so much, and thank you so much, Nima. You already know I have so much love for you, so much love, deep and profound respect for you, and I really appreciate that you asked me to be a part of your podcast. It was a beautiful experience, and I really do hope that for those who are in this room or those who are listening out there, that it's provided some value to you, and that it'll encourage you to potentially take a leap of faith.
Definitely. No, it's been my pleasure. Keep on being yourself, Andrea. Keep on kicking ass and stepping things up as you always do. And speak to you next time. Thanks, everyone.
See y'all next time. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Nima.